DeSean Jackson said he was going to make it happen, and he did. In 2025, Delaware State versus Norfolk State will be played in the home of the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh, yeah. It's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, everydayers, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me at South Exclusives on Twitter. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode wraps up with a look at Dawson Odums, who is going from Norfolk State after stepping down, or I think he was fired actually, but after leaving Norfolk State, he will find himself on the Jaguars sideline for just a couple of months. In segment 2, I have a couple of HBCU games that I wouldn't mind seeing being hosted at NFL stadiums, and it's all inspired by the biggest news of the week, and that is Delaware State versus Norfolk State 2025 will be hosted in Lincoln Financial Field, aka the home of the Philadelphia Eagles. This is huge news, and this is not news that you typically get in the middle of June or at the beginning of June. It's just not a summer breaking story. You know, when you see schedule changes, sometimes you have them during the season. One of this magnitude would have to happen before the year, but you don't typically see this venue or this type of matchup be changed at this moment. When Valley versus FAMU got changed, it wasn't really a big deal to me, to be honest. It was a thing that I paid attention to, but it wasn't something I wanted to come on here and talk about. But Norfolk State versus Delaware State getting changed to Lincoln Financial Field, to me, was a huge story that I was like, whoa, I'm excited. And I think that excitement is what made me realize I was wrong with my initial statement, because you have to understand, DeSean Jackson, since being hired, I would say maybe a month later, has been campaigning. I wouldn't say pleading. I wouldn't even really say asking, but he's been campaigning and saying, I'm going to get this done. We are going to have DeSean Jackson versus Michael Vick in Lincoln Financial Field, in the Eagles Stadium. I just didn't think it would happen this fast. I didn't. When I got the text message, Mason, friend of the show, Mason, texted me, was like, I emoji, with the link of the news breaking. And when I saw that, my own excitement made me realize that I was wrong in my initial take. My initial take was, because mind you, he's been saying this, my initial take was DeSean Jackson versus Michael Vick, Delaware State versus Norfolk State. They should play in the Eagles Stadium year 3. And I don't think it's a bad plan. I understand why I thought it. Like, I still know my reasoning, and it was I wanted the home fans in Dover, the home fans in Norfolk, to be able to see this matchup in their own residence. I wanted that to be the case. But I don't think it's going to match up. You got to strike while the iron's hot. And I get it. You got to strike while the iron's hot. And this is the most iron hot type of move, right? So the reason I'm going to look up how far Delaware State is from Lincoln Financial Field specifically, that's an hour and 20 minutes. For Norfolk State, that is 5 hours and 14 minutes. Not as close, but here's the thing about it is, let me see how far it would have been to go to Delaware. Because the thing about this is Norfolk State isn't giving up a home game. Norfolk State is not giving up a home game. So that's the important thing here. It's not that much farther. So Delaware State would have been 4 hours and 2 minutes versus, I think that was like 5:40 or something like that. I think that was like 5:40 that you had. So it's just an extra hour and some change on your, or 5:14. So it's just an extra hour on your travel time. all in all, this is a pretty solid move, if you ask me. This is a pretty solid move. And I'm glad that Delaware State is the one that gave up a home game because it makes the most sense. DeSean Jackson was the one who was pushing for this game more than anybody else. I never heard Michael Vick really speak on it until now. He did give up a statement about the decision, but I didn't hear him pushing for it. One thing that was funny to me is that Jackson didn't say me and Vic are doing this and that. He said I call Big Dom, and I remember Big Dom for getting in a scuffle with one of the players during a playoff game, an opposing player, and that's when I found out who Big Dom was. Now I know he got way more pull in the city than I imagined. When I was in Philadelphia, I should have been looking for Big Dom. He would have got me anything I needed, but I felt this was going to happen. I just didn't think it should have happened year 3. I was wrong, or year 1. I was wrong about that. And I didn't think it would happen year 1. I didn't think that he'd be able to be as proactive to get it done immediately. I thought it would be year 2, which I'm glad also didn't happen because next year Norfolk will be hosting this game. So I think that this was a really good call. This is what DeSean Jackson had to say about the decision and about making it happen. I came to Delaware State to start a new phase of my career with a unique institution that cares about its students and is helping transform their futures. Part of that transformation is opening our students and scholar athletes up to a whole new set of experiences at the highest level. For our teams to be playing in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field, on the field, Coach Vic and I called home for many years, will be special for our players, our coaching staffs, our alumni and fans, and for HBCU culture around the country. I do agree. This should be a premier matchup. It has been changed to a Thursday game. I don't know what Thursday games ESPN has. The MEAC hasn't announced their ESPN schedule. I can assume that this game will be broadcasted on ESPN because giving it the ESPN treatment on a Saturday maybe would have been a little bit tough. But in the middle of the week, when you don't have as many college games, I do think you can do it. The one thing you have to look out for is they will have a they'll have competition with Thursday night football. And we know how the NFL is. We know how that goes, but at least you don't have college. Let's see who's playing that day. You have Baltimore versus Miami. That's probably going to be a good game. I think Miami's going to be much better. And even if it's not, people are going to show up to watch Lamar Jackson. So you do have big competition. You have big competition if you're this Delaware State, Norfolk State matchup, but you should be hosted on ESPN, which will give you the maximum amount of collegiate eyes. ESPN2 maybe. But on a Thursday, they shouldn't have a lot of competition for you. I think that this will be broadcasted pretty widely. I think they'll find this to be important because you'll have Vic and you'll have Jackson. So speaking of Vic, he echoes some of the sentiments that Coach Jack said, but here you go. This is a tremendous opportunity for our student athletes to play in a world-class venue on a world-class stage. Coach Jackson and I made so many unforgettable memories together at Lincoln Financial Field. This stadium holds special meaning in my NFL career. I am thrilled, I am thrilled to be a part of this historic moment and want to thank the Philadelphia Eagles, Norfolk State, and Delaware State for their collaboration to make this happen. As far as stadium use goes, this was a great week to do it because Philadelphia is on a bye week. So they don't have any game there. They played there the week before, but that obviously doesn't matter. You actually move the game closer to the day that they played. So by moving it to Thursday, you actually moved it closer. I don't think it'd be a problem. I wonder why they didn't do it on a Friday. They could have kept it on Saturday technically, but I assume that they moved that because they had a better window. Or maybe they just have somebody using the stadium on Saturday. Maybe they have someone using the stadium on Friday. But they end up moving this on Thursday. And I think that all in all, it goes from November 1st to Saturday to October 30th, a Thursday. And the Eagles don't play until November 16th. So you have a lot of time to turn things around depending on what's going on in the stadium. I think that this was a great call. I love it. I love it, man. I know that I stood against it softly, but even softly, I'm like, dang, I missed the boat on that one because this makes the most sense. This makes the most sense. And quite frankly, I don't think that there is another game that you could put together between two institutions at a neutral site that would make as much sense as Delaware State versus Norfolk State playing at Lincoln Financial Field. Because you have to understand, DeSean Jackson is one of the most charismatic players that I remember from my youth. And I associate him completely with the Eagles. I know he went on to play for Washington, and he had some big moments for Washington. I understand that he went on to play for the Ravens, and I think he played for somebody else. He played for the Rams, but I think that may be it. But at that point, I wasn't quite sure what was going on with him, or it didn't stick out. But I think of DeSean Jackson as an Eagle. Michael Vick, kind of back and forth. I kind of still view him as a Falcon to me, but at the same time, he spent a lot of time with the Eagles. So I could see either one of those being associated with him. Me personally, I associate the Falcons with him. Maybe that's because I'm a Saints fan, so he was a rival at that point. But all in all, Michael Vick, before he went away, is where I really think of him at number one. But a close second is Philadelphia. The point is, both of these players are synonymous with this team, especially when you look at Philadelphia's history of black quarterbacks. You can go through the Cunninghams, the McNabbs, the Jalen Hurts now. You're looking at Vic. They're all a part of that, So I do think that when you're looking at Philadelphia history, if you're looking at Philadelphia Eagle history, this is a duo of Vic and Jackson that are closely tied to a big-time era in their history as a team. Jackson and Vic have made a lot of memories on that field. For them to have a new chapter of their life that they're stepping into, for them to move into coaching for the first time and to step into that against each other in their inaugural years, I think it makes a lot of sense to host it at the Philadelphia Eagles Stadium. I really do. You can't tell me there's a bigger matchup on a neutral site than Vic versus Jackson, Norfolk State versus Delaware State. The two have connected many of times in that stadium as teammates. This time they step in as adversaries. This is the perfect place to start their chapter against each other. The only thing that could have made it better if this was the first game of the season, but it's not. So we'll see them coach a little bit, but it is the first time that they'll face each other. It was already a big time matchup, and I believe putting big on big. I believe on building on strengths, and this was already going to be a high profile matchup that I think only increased its profile by stepping into Lincoln Financial Field. But is there a game that we do want to see? Maybe not at the same level, but is there a game that we do want to see be hosted at an NFL stadium? I have a few selections, and only one of them is an example of me being biased, but we'll get into that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel does not stop the moment that the ball is tipped off. It is not over once the game starts. You can also get live game betting. That means if you step into a fourth quarter and the Pacers are down a good amount, but you know they're known to come back, the cardiac surge. I hate that surge thing, but it flows with the alliteration. The cardiac surge, if you know that they're prone to coming back and you want to put some money down in the fourth quarter when the odds are looking bleak, but you know you got Halliburton and them boys on your team, you can do that with FanDuel. You can. Maybe you say, I don't care what the score is. The Thunder are going to win, and I could put that money down before the game. That's cool. You do that too. Maybe you're not even really into basketball and you prefer MLB. They have that too. You just pick your poison. Go to fanduel.com and new customers will get $200 back in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. Put down something easy and then get a little bit more difficult as you go to fanduel.com and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA because you had a big-time game one in the NBA Finals. Let's recap that and preview game two, all right? So go ahead and check out Locked On NBA from our local experts. I want to continue rolling with this idea of who would play in a neutral site, specifically an NFL stadium, because we have many games that are played in neutral sites, but they aren't necessarily played at NFL stadiums. So I got a couple of games that I want to suggest. Let's first off take out the fact that you're going to have the Celebration Bowl and MEAC SWAC Challenge. They're going to be played in Atlanta. You're going to have the Bayou Classic. That's going to be played in New Orleans. I took those games out of this, but you still see an increase in HBCU matchups that are played in NFL stadiums. It just feels like we're seeing more of them these just recently. I mentioned this one earlier, FAMU versus Mississippi Valley State. I don't know why they moved that game. That game didn't feel like one to really move to a bigger stadium, but they still did it. And I'll take that, right? Like, they're going to be played in Atlanta. They're going to be played at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Now, the one I am excited about is Jackson State versus Grambling. I think that's major. I think that is an incredible game to have in Vegas. I think these are fan bases that are going to be insane. I think that I love this game. I'm excited for the game, period, because I'm always interested to see what Grambling's going to do. Jackson State is the defending champions, and I'm always excited to see what Grambling could be. So that's one that's very interesting to me. I'll be honest with you. That's one that's very, very, very interesting to me. But it just feels like in general we're having a bump. I don't know if I want to count the Circle City Classic because they've been in the Lucas Oil Stadium, but it just feels like there's a renewed prominence placed on the game. This year is Morgan State versus Miles. I guess that kind of falls in the category with the Classic. Kind of falls in the category with the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Did anybody ever call that just the challenge? I don't feel like no one does that. I should start doing that. I'm gonna start calling it the challenge. But yeah, it doesn't fall in that same category to me, but I think it's close. So I understand if you want to do that. But for me, it's just the boost of HBCU matchups versus HBCUs, right? Not oh, we're going to play Temple and we're playing at the Eagle Stadium. No, this is Norfolk State versus Delaware State. This is FAMU versus Mississippi Valley State. This is Grambling State versus Jackson State. It's a whole bunch of states out there. But I'll tell you one that I'm looking forward to, and I wouldn't mind. I'm going to get my bias out the way right away. STSU versus PV. We don't have a lot of rivals at Texas Southern. And I understand that football hasn't been that good at Texas Southern. I don't even know if it's a good idea to do it, but I want to see it. This is pure selfish intention. This is purely me being biased because it's my alma mater. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Just know that I would really like to see TSU play PV in the Houston Texans Stadium. I'm not even asking for you to go somewhere that is out of the state, right? Because Valley versus FAMU is in Atlanta. Delaware State versus Norfolk State is in Pennsylvania. Jackson State versus Grambling State is in Nevada. Like, I'm not asking for you to step out and say, okay, now you can go play in, geez, Texas ain't got too many options. I'll be honest with you. Arkansas, no team. Oklahoma, no team. New Mexico, no team. I'm not asking you to go play in the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium. I'm not asking you to do that, But what I am saying is just put it in the Houston Texans Stadium. Put it in the Texans Stadium and let it be a TSU home game that gets lost. It's close, right? It's not that big of a deal for all of the fans. I just say you got to show up, guys. The stadium is not packed enough for me to really support doing this from a business standpoint, but I'm biased, so I want to see it. I go there for sure. I'm doubtful if I'm going to go this year just because I don't think it's that good of a game. But if it's going to be in Reliant Stadium, I'm there. Facts. I'm out there. Now, let's move on to some other games that I think are better suited for an NFL stadium. I went really back and forth here. Between the Eagle Aggie Classic and the Battle for the Real HU. And I ended up going with Howard versus Hampton because they have a lot of experience playing in a neutral site. I'll tell you what ended up being the swaying factors here. The experience and then also the profile of both schools. I think that Howard and Hampton have a higher combined profile than A&T and Central. I think that Howard may have the highest. Howard's in that top 3 to 4 when it comes to highest profile amongst all HBCUs. That's my personal opinion. I think Howard may be 1. Howard may be 1, maybe 2. I can't see them being any lower than 3. I would have to see a real argument. I think that you have Howard, you have Morehouse. I think FAMU's getting a lot of love now. That's probably my top 3 as far as visual profile, because when people think HBCUs, Howard is one of the first ones they name. Morehouse is one of the first ones they name. They donate to. Those are the ones that people are, it's more than just 2 HBCUs. Typically, we're talking about Howard and Morehouse. So I feel like they have to be 1 and 2. But FAMU has a great digital platform right now as far as university, as far as colorways, as far as partnerships. They got LeBron. It's a lot, but that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. Howard versus Hampton have a higher profile to me combined. And then you also look at the fact that they played neutral site games quite frequently. The last 2 seasons, neutral site. 2021, 2019, neutral site. So mind you, they didn't play in 2020. So you're looking at 19, 20, 23, or excuse me, 19, 21, 23, and 24. So outside of one season in the last 5 years, it's been played at a neutral site. So the Eagle Aggie Classic has only been there once or twice in the last just recent memory. They haven't done a lot of neutral sites. So for that reason, I said Howard and Hampton seem more open to the idea. Let's go ahead and put them in the new stadium in DC that the Commanders are about to go play in, which is going to be at the site of RFK, which is the same place that they played in 2012. So they have Howard and Hampton have experience playing in that local area. Let's just put them in the new stadium. Then I went South Carolina State versus an SEC school because I really wanted something MEAC versus something SWAC. I think that'd be really dope to have in a neutral site stadium. It could be the Jaguar Stadium. It could be Atlanta, even though that feels too much like the Challenge to me, too much like the Celebration Bowl to me. Put it in Nashville, maybe. Like you have some options when you get over there. You have some options when you get over there. But in general, I think South Carolina State, and I really want to say FAMU, but I don't want to spam the FAMU button. But I really do feel like South Carolina State versus FAMU in a neutral site would be a big time matchup. And it brings me to my last one, FAMU versus Jackson State. That's why I didn't want to spam the FAMU button. It could be South Carolina State versus any MEAC school. It could be South Carolina State versus Southern. It could be South Carolina State versus Grambling. I'm trying to think some of the bigger platforms. It could be South Carolina State versus Jackson State. I'm trying to think of some of the bigger schools. And I think that the Bulldogs have such a rich history that you can really sell on that. So anyway, as you push forward, I got one more I wanted to get out. But FAMU versus Jackson State on the West Coast. I don't have a specific destination for South Carolina State versus whoever. But for Jackson State and FAMU, I want them on the West Coast. Give me that in Arizona. Give me that in Denver. Because if I'm going to the West, if I'm going to the Wild Wild West, and I'm going to a place where there's not a lot of HBCUs, so we got to bring our best out there, I'm taking Jackson State and FAMU. That's the type of game that is going to be heated. It's going to be a great environment. If I'm just a Phoenix native, if I'm just a Scottsdale or Denver native, right? Like if I'm just in that area and I decide, yeah, I want to go to this game because it's over here. You're going to see a passionate fan base that I believe both will travel. You're going to see great bands. You're going to have amazing bands to listen to. You're going to have hopefully good product on the field. It changes year by year. So just saying this, I can't guarantee that it'll be a good product. But I think the chances are you'll see a good game in some capacity. And these teams don't like each other. So you'll be privy to some trash talk. You'll be privy to a really great environment to step into. And if you bring your 15-year-old son or your 15-year-old daughter, I could see the enrollment going up. These schools are going to travel. They're going to show up with their bands. They're going to show up with quality football. They're going to show up with fans that don't like each other. They're going to show up on the recruiting side as well in the days leading up to the matchup. Give me FAMU versus Jackson State on the West Coast. And yes, I did save the best for last because that's the one I'm the most excited for. And it's the one that I actually beat the table for. Give me that. I need it. And Dawson Odums needed another chance, and he got it with the Jacksonville Jaguars, even if it's just for a couple of months. Odums is a part of the Bill Walsh Fellowship. We're going to break down his trajectory and how this could impact him as we close out today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Dawson Odums is going to be on the sideline of NFL training camp, and I think that this is good for him because I don't know what he was going to do. If nothing else, the Bill Walsh Fellowship gives him something to take in and absorb for a year because I do think there's a good chance we don't see Dawson Odums on a sideline this weekend or this season. You have to understand it is a what have you done for me lately type of league, but it's what has he done for you in the past that probably earned him this fellowship because his time in Norfolk State was not very good, but he closed out Southern very strong. When he was at Southern the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, he ended up going 26-9 in conference play. He ended up having a really good time his last few years at Southern. He won a SWAC Coach of the Year. He won a SWAC championship. He won multiple SWAC West titles. So he was in the championship game on multiple occasions. So you're looking at a coach who did do a lot. He did a lot at Southern. So I understand why he was a high-profile hire at Norfolk State. But once he got to the Spartans, he didn't do enough. He just didn't do enough. And even that first year, it's kind of difficult for me to absorb, I'll say. It's difficult for me to take in the way that I know many people would want to take it in. Because Norfolk State, they hadn't had a winning record since 2007. And you come in your first year, 2021, and you go 6-5. So you give them their first winning record in almost a decade and a half. My problem with that is it features a lot of great stuff, but it features a big-time flaw. It features a big-time flaw. You're looking at a 6-game win streak, longest since the 80s. So you're talking about almost 40 years since you had a win streak like this. Okay, cool. That's great. You highlight that. First winning season since 2007, a decade and a half almost. Okay, cool. You like that. But the problem is you didn't compete in the conference. Your out-of-conference wins, you do have some good ones. You beat St. Francis, an FCS school. You beat Hampton, an FCS school. So, you like that, and then you come and you win your first 2 MEAC games, and then you lose your last 3. In year one, we'll take that. In year one, we'll allow that to be what you are. But after that, we aren't accepting it. And you go 2-4, 2-4, or excuse me, 2-3, 2-3, 1-4, 2-3. That's not good enough. That is not good enough at all. That's 7-15 or 7-13. Excuse me. It's not good enough. Over 4 years, you're not winning enough games. You're never competitive. At no point do you feel like Norfolk State was a player because the conference has been decided by 1 loss. You have 3 every year. You could win 1 more game and you still not really a contender. And that's why you had to go. But I think being a part of the Bill Walsh Fellowship allows him to soak up new information. I don't know if we see him on a staff this year. I know he won't be a head coach anywhere. That's doubtful. But having this a part of his resume, it allows him to make new connections there. He's obviously shown himself to be a good coach in the past, so you can lean on that part of your resume. And who knows, maybe he finds himself in a smaller role on an NFL capacity. But this is all about building connections. This is all about building people that you can rely on for reference, people who like your work and maybe want to pull you on full time or at least for a season. That would be the best case. I don't know what Dawson Odums does in 2025, but if he shows himself to be a great candidate during this fellowship with the Jaguars, which he'll just be there for training camp and OTAs or mini camp at OTAs, actually. I don't think they're there for training camp. You can see these are the type of connections that last for a long time. We saw what happened with Eddie George. Eddie George did this, and all of a sudden he's interviewing for an NFL job. I know he didn't get it, but I don't think he even gets this interview if it isn't for his time with the Bill Walsh Fellowship. So just some things to look at. I think we maybe wondered what Odums would do after being fired by Norfolk State, and this is where he's landed. And I think this will probably be the last that we see of him in 2025, at least. In the meantime, in between time, we'll be back on Friday, guys. I'm going out of town, so I'm going to pre-record Monday and Wednesday's episode. We'll be talking about Alabama State being the best in the SWAC. They are. They have been for the last 3 years, and I can prove it. I'll do that on Monday. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.